Exorcism. You hear a lot about exorcism. You hear a lot about the Catholic Church taking an entity from someone, taking an entity from a child or a possessed person. You hear this a lot. But it's not only Catholics who perform exorcisms, Protestants do as well. All the Abrahamics do. Now, what no one ever thinks about is that they, the demon is, or the entity is brought to the surface, okay? And you have the Catholic priest over there spewing the holy water and doing the rites of exorcism. What the Catholic Church never tells you is where the demon goes. It hops into another person. They release the demon out of the being into the person into another person. This is why many priests, this is why there's so much paedophilia in the Catholic Church, is because, and all these horrible Presbyterians who do exorcisms, is because the entity jumps into a priest. You saw that Father Karras at the end of the Exorcist. They were telling you the real truth there. The priest, if he's a selfish, kind man, will absorb the entity into him and then kill himself, rather than have the demon. That's the only way to get the demon back to the abyss. Exorcising the demon brings it out. Now, it probably will come as a surprise to you that I have done this, but I haven't brought the demon out of the person. I brought the demon to the surface. And I'll give you a story that happened about 5 years ago. 5 years ago, there was this DJ on a minor radio station with about 6 listeners here in Ireland who started shit with me. Incredibly passive aggressive, smoked astounding amounts of cannabis, perfect, and I was suspicious about, there was the passive aggressive, the smugness, the huge amounts of cannabis that this person was taking, that I was suspected that there was an entity inside him, but a minor one, and I tolerated him until I got fed up with him, and I told him to piss off or something like that, and he started smear campaigning me on the internet. You see, this is what the ones who smear campaign, like a normal person, if someone pisses them off, they say, fuck that asshole a few times, or they go away. There is an entity behind the smear campaign, either through things like crystal meth, cannabis use, heavy alcoholism, or sex freaks, people who are into, human suffering, and they like things like going to S&M clubs and burning women with cigarettes, those types. They all are infected. Now, and people in the circle, it becomes like a kind of a clustering of the same entity, a very powerful one. And you can always tell them by they babble, they talk shite, they make up lies, they have dead eyes, they're hysterical, they go into massive hysteria. And so how I got the demon out of him was, I coaxed it out. Now, this is a dangerous game, so don't play it. But don't play it in person. I was doing it online. And so anyway, I got him to run a smear campaign. And what happens usually is people who love me hex him. I don't do it. My army do. And just observed him quietly. Suddenly he starts acting very strangely on the internet. The entity that was in there was not getting its food because he was disrupted. He wasn't functioning properly. He was malfunctioning. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. He made up a story. He was posting that I've been kidnapped against my will and I've been taken away, please. And all these stupid fucking truthers were going, oh no, he's been kidnapped. I was laughing my head off. This was the entity desperate for someone to bring weed over to his house or something like that. And then the last thing he ever posted was, and I'll never forget this as long as I live, I've screenshotted it and saved it for posterity. He wrote, laugh out loud, I am a spiritual gangster. That's the actual term he used. Laugh out loud, I am a spiritual gangster. The next thing that happened was we heard nothing for about a week and found out that his family had sectioned him in a maximum security psychiatric hospital here in Ireland, where he was in a straitjacket in the corner of a room, screaming and howling in his own piss and shit. You pay when you play. And I took extreme satisfaction in this for a short while. And what happened then was he's come out of hospital, out of mental hospital, and never bothered me ever since. And the entity that was inside him almost certainly jumped into another schizophrenic inside the psychiatric hospital. It was fair game. He started the war and I finished it with some help. And that's how it always goes. Now, the entity is wild and furious. It goes from 0 to 100. It cannot maintain itself in a kind of a sense of pacing. There's the initial. You can always tell them anyone who's ever been on crystal meth. Not many heroin addicts. Heroin addicts seem to get over pill heads, extreme alcoholics, continuous cannabis smokers. Now, he's against my shamanic medicine. I'll give you another example. A demon-infected whore of the abyss, a cancerous, malignant entity of pure death and hate, is this other cunt who runs another radio show and claims to be a fucking healer. And this thing is pure 100% demon. And recipe for misery. And this thing is an absolute drag. I've already forgiven it once for stabbing me in the back. But now I have told the witches of Turin to unleash their worst upon this creature and obliterate it and all it loves from the face of the earth. And you cannot have someone who's that heavily infected with an entity in society, because all they do is they cause horrific trauma for everyone around them. You do their families a favor by putting them in a psychiatric hospital, or whatever. You do their families a favor, because it's the only chance of the entity ever getting out is inside a psychiatric hospital, where you have lifelong patients whose their firewall is down and it can jump, and maybe you can save them, maybe they can be redeemed, but some just don't. Because there's no demarcation line between the entity and the person. It becomes fused in one. And the internet is a phenomenal place for this. When they go on the internet howling and screaming and having their emotions, unable to control their emotions, and bringing as many people as possible into it, all they're doing is supercharging, like a battery, the entity inside them. And it only makes them feel more horrible and worse and sickened. And it's a horrible feeling, I'd imagine, knowing that you've got this, knowing you'll never be satisfied ever again. Imagine that feeling. That's what it's like with these types. They're never, because the thing inside them is like a spiritual tapeworm. It eats and it eats and it feeds and it gorges. And it never ever stops, and it babbles, babbles all the time. The thing like speaking in tongues, the babbler in the abyss and all that thing. That's all true. That's all absolutely true. So, by coaxing the entity to the surface, you are aware of what you're dealing with, because it's quite different than dealing with someone who's suffering from basic mental illness. Someone who's suffering from basic mental illness doesn't boast about their mental illness. They don't look for sympathy. They don't look for enablers. They don't look for... But the ones who are infected, you can always tell. Now, there are ones who do have mental illness who do ask for help. Not the ones who ask for help. A person who is too sad inside themselves will not be passive aggressive. It just will not happen. But the entity inside, then you can always tell. That's why I have two things I have a fucking zero tolerance. Fuck who you are. One is attempting to gaslight me. Two is passive aggressiveness. Now, I'll accept passive aggressiveness and smugness for a little while, but then if I see it's an ongoing trait, you look for you look for the other markers. The entity inside them wants weed. It wants alcohol. Now, this was made very clear to me years ago when I was living in New York at a Santeria ritual, where a woman brought forth this entity that was able to help people who'd lost things. I couldn't understand it because it was in Spanish that well, but This woman, a little Puerto Rican woman, well, I think she was Puerto Rican, but Latino, she drank a whole bottle of Jack Daniels, I think it was back, I can't remember, and smoked cigars. And when she came out of the trance, stone cold sober. It was the entity, this is why they call it spirits. It was the entity inside it that wanted the cigars, cocaine, and booze. You know, one of the things, the, that engine in me howled. One of the things, fuck it, I'll just hold there. One of the things to look out for I'll just walk a bit anyway. One of the things to just look out for is the passive aggressiveness and the extreme inability to control its emotions. You know, hatred that doesn't need to exist. And I'm not talking about and whoredom. If it's a woman acting like an old whore, acting like an old slut, that kind of thing. And that's the other side of it. Always, and as soon as you recognize them, that this is what's going on, you get these fuckers out of your life, because you will age, because they will psychically harvest you. They will play mind games with you. They'll be passive aggressive. They will try to gaslight you. And fuck them. Fuck them. Your job is, you see, you're not a Christian, right? You hear this, I gotta save him, I'm a Christian. Oh, I gotta save him for the Lord, I'm a Christian. That's like, now let me tell you what that's like. You're in a place like this and a fucking bear comes for you, right? The nearest thing to a bear around here would be like a flasher. A bear comes for you. You're like going, I bless you, bear. I bless you in the name of the Lord God Jesus Christ, bear. Don't eat me. That's exactly the same thing these types do. Like, I want to help them. I want to help them. Nah. So that was an amazing story of that guy 5 years ago. Came out, oh my God, he ran this, a total maggot. But he is a compliant, well-behaved little boy now, because he knows that when he was sitting in that psychiatric hospital in his straitjacket, screaming and howling in a pool of his own shit and piss, that the one name that he was calling out for mercy was me.